Um, Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Marotra, and I'm the head of marketing at Extraordinary Journeys. So welcome to the first event in our new Passport series. Welcome to the first event in our new webinar series, Passports, Virtual Journeys. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Extraordinary Journeys, we're a luxury travel company connecting travelers with authentic experiences and conservation-focused properties in select destinations around the world. What began as a love for Africa grew to include wild places around the globe, including South Africa, South America, Australia, New Zealand, the Indian subcontinent, and most recently in our own backyard, the United States. In our line of work, we're fortunate to meet and work with so many incredible people who influence and shape the world that we live in. Through Passports, we're bringing them into your homes to take you to new places and explore new ideas. On June 24th, next month, we'll be welcoming record-holding freediver Hanley Prinsloo to the Passport stage to discuss her work through I Am Water to conserve the world's oceans and marine life. Today, though, we are joined by award-winning photographer Georgina Goodwin, who will discuss her journey as a documentary photographer promoting social change, and now as her current role as a resident photographer at Cottar Safaris, where she uses her platform to advocate for wildlife conservation. After we hear from Georgina, we'll be joined by Brooke Berlin, founder of Karoo Consulting. Karoo represents companies that promote travel to Africa and support conservation and community nonprofits. Cottar Safaris naturally fits those ideals, and it was during a 2-week stay with Cottars this past February that Brooke first met Georgina, who was photographing the activities of the day at the Masai community near the 1920s camp. Brooke's love of cultural anthropology and photojournalism naturally connected the two, and we're pleased to have her joining us to lead the Q&A and to introduce Georgina. So Brooke, I'll pass the mic to you.
Thanks for that, Jamie, and I am thrilled to be here. I absolutely adore working with the Extraordinary Journeys team, and I'm honored to be co-presenting today the time that you're going to have with an extraordinary woman and professional photographer, Georgina Goodwin. So Jamie's right. I spent 2 weeks at Cottar's and actually the full month of February in Kenya. And I'm now on a workcation on Big Island. So sorry for the rain that's going on behind me a little bit, basically just to avoid mud season. And I say that because it's never been easier to work away or simply get away and stay longer in fewer places to immerse yourself. And Extraordinary Journeys, in collaboration with Georgina, have done just that and created a very special itinerary for you at Cottar's with some photography amenities built in. And yes, Cottar's is where I first met Georgina, where she was photographing the community engagement day that I was a part of before going out with the wildlife conservation team to see the pangolin burrow, which is another impact activity at Cottar's. Having Georgina photograph the experience completely elevated it because I didn't have to think about it myself. I could participate more fully in the activities of the day. I got professional yet candid memories. And honestly, sometimes I feel nervous behind a camera photographing communities, so my shots never come out the way that I like them to. And these are just a few of the things that you'll hear about today. In just registering for this webinar, you would have received a bit of Georgina's bio, a born and raised Kenyan, an independent documentary photographer for more than 15 years. Her work's been published in the likes of the New York Times, BBC, CNN, and countless others, with awards including the British Journal of Photography Portrait of Humanity grant, Kenya Nature and News Photographer of the Year, and many, many more. She's a Canon ambassador, and her work in Africa focuses on social, female, and environmental issues, all of which are very near and dear to my heart for sure, as well as focusing on ensuring, of course, that your safari time looks just as fabulous in your photos as it does in person. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Georgina. I will see you all again for the Q&A. Please remember to put them in the chat box, and that way I can monitor and hopefully get to as many of them as possible. Thanks, Georgina. Over to you.
Okay, really great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar series to Passports Virtual Journeys. My name is Georgina Goodwin, and I'm born in Kenya. I'm living here in Kenya, and my journey as a photographer started 15 years ago. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about how everything started for me and where I am now. And hopefully it'll inspire you and whet your appetite to come and have some safaris with Extraordinary Journeys and Cottars. And hopefully I'll get to meet you. So let's start. This is a photograph that I took very early on in the beginning of my career. It's cheetahs at sunset. And it was one of the first images that I realized that I had some kind of talent. So I actually won a local Kodak Photographer of the Year, Wildlife Photographer of the Year award with this cheetah. So you're looking at something really that was the beginning of my career. So let's carry on into my journey. Here we go. I do quite a lot of training and webinars with Canon, and this is the front cover that I usually use, and I just absolutely adore this moment with the children right on the Somalia border when I was photographing and documenting turtles with World Wildlife Fund. But you know, obviously really nice to just jump out of the NGO world and get into daily life. So here we are. This is me in South Africa. Just reconnecting with one of the elephants in Knysna. I've always loved wildlife. Being born and brought up in Kenya, we've always gone on safari. And early on in my career, I was hired to supplement the images of a Kenya promoting Kenya program. So I got a lot of really beautiful images, and this sunrise on the coast of Kenya is one of them. And the quote that I've put here is something that I stand by ever since I wrote it, which is probably about 10 years ago. As an African visual storyteller, I feel strongly that this is my duty to make sure that the very real and fast-paced changes that are occurring all around us in Africa today are documented, and our voices as Africans are heard all around the world. So you'll see that that really is the backdrop to all the work that I've done in the last 15 years. Okay. I photographed quite a few personalities, Mandela being one of them. A lot of these personalities and characters are people who are socially, you know, dealing with social issues and been big leaders of change. It was a real honor to meet and photograph Mandela. I worked with the Agence France Presse, photographing the Pope's tour around East Africa a couple of years ago. Of course, there's Lupita Nyong'o, who was the voiceover for one of the My Africa, which won an award for, it's a 3D virtual reality movie that I worked on with Conservation International. So everything that I do is sort of social based, but it works with NGOs or with big clients, but there's always some environmental, human and nature connection with everything, joining it. And of course, there's Ban Ki-moon when he came out to Kenya. This is Ban Ki-moon in Nairobi National Park. Wilson Kipsang, the world marathon record holder. He's fighting lots of social issues here in Kenya, not least, you know, trying to get the athletes and people attitudes and things towards sport and young women elevated as well. Ian Douglas Hamilton has spent his whole life living and working, protecting elephants. Done up some work with him. This is a photo shoot I did for Google and looking at the work that they do for, and it was published in Elle magazine. So early on in my career, I really found a taste, if you like, it's not the right word, but, you know, sort of the need to have a voice and look at things that weren't really obvious to people and sort of underreported issues. And one of the things that I realized, particularly in Kenya, is that people don't realize that cancer is not just a first world disease. It was and still is, you know, has a big impact and big effect in Kenya and in Africa, because people are you know, they're not able to get to medical facilities. They learn about their cancer late. So I spent 4 years of my personal time, this is my personal work, documenting and looking at people with cancer. And I met some amazing people. This beautiful girl here, Sandra, unfortunately has passed away. But on World Women's Day, or World Health Day, The Guardian published a 6-page spread looking at the work that I've done, which was a real honor and just wonderful to share the work that I've done and the stories of these amazing people and it really shone a big light on the issues of cancer in Kenya, which really haven't been known before. And here we go. This is Margaret. She had lost her breast about 50 years ago. They just, you know, obviously there's no opportunities back then to have any changes or, you know, any prosthetics done. She's been living like this for 50 years. She's now sort of 78. And she's a amazing leader in her community and spokesperson. And so meeting people like this has really kept me going and interested in showing underreported stories. But of course, it's very difficult to like these kind of stories. So getting followers and audiences for this kind of thing is obviously a little bit difficult. I had the opportunity to visit the Umoja Women's Village in northern Kenya in Samburu on assignment for The Guardian. And I was one of the first photographers, this was in 2015, one of the first photographers who was given access without having to pay. I joined a gender activist, Julie Bindel, and we spent a couple of days with these women. And it was amazing to see how they live. And they titled it "The Women Where Men Are Banned." So these are women who have run away from forced marriage and underage marriage and female circumcision, and come to this amazing, beautiful village where they all support each other and they earn money. And it was a real honor and privilege. And this series of photographs was awarded, I was awarded the Daily News Photographer of the Year in Kenya in 2018. So I've traveled extensively around Africa. This is Somaliland. I'm looking at environmental issues. This is for Care International, the drought in Somaliland where there failed rains for 3 years. And following on the issues of climate change and environment, I've now become a contributor to Everyday Climate Change on Instagram. It's a wonderful platform that's in support all around the world. They showcase big billboards with a platform called Disturb, and this was shown in America, I think in Charleston, on a big wall somewhere. It was wonderful to have my work showing up there, just showing what it's like now as climate changes. This is in the South Rift in Kenya. And the Kenya South Rift. So back going to the Masai Mara, there's a beautiful forest on the northern boundary called the Lolgurian forest, which sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings, and it's just absolutely beautiful, but it's pristine. And these are the Masai that sort of live in and around, and the lodges are there that protect that area. And this image is something very powerful for me. It really shows sort of the guardians of the forest and people, the connection that we can have. And I use it quite a lot to really showcase the beauty and the power that we have, and our connection of being in forests. And here again, this is a little rhino called Kilifi on Lewa Conservancy with one of the guides. Unfortunately, Kilifi hasn't survived, but you know, these sort of iconic images have gone a long way to showcasing protection of species, protection of environment. And I've done a lot of work in Tanzania and in Zambia. Here in Tanzania, working with some anti-poaching teams. This is up the Malagarasi River. And unfortunately, you know, there's looking at big issues such as snaring, which is just indiscriminate killing, and the poachers never even come back. There's just thousands of animals that get slaughtered every year. This is in Zambia. I went with the Nature Conservancy, another big American organization. We went to photograph the early burning and learn about the benefits of early burning, so that later on when these big fires come, they don't completely destroy massive hectares of habitat. It was very, very interesting. Every assignment that I've been on, every client, every place I've been, I just learned so much and really connect back to what it is and how important it is to protect these incredible wild spaces. This was sunrise on the Kafue River in Zambia, completely untouched. Zambia is one of the most beautiful, stunning places. It was such an honor to be there for a whole week and capture these amazing pictures. And this is some of the early burning, training some of the young burners on how to start the fires and control burning, so that later on, when the rains do come, the green grass comes through and the wildlife is drawn to those areas. And later on, further in the season, the big fires don't come through and decimate everything. Okay. And here's the rangers, the community rangers from nearby. They were actually trained by the Nature Conservancy, coming in, helping to protect the area. And it was just wonderful just hanging out with them for 2 days, sleeping under the stars with them, and just learning about what they do to protect this small area right on the edge of the Kafue. So you can see how communities and adjacent conservancies can work together to be in support of major reserves like Kafue. This is more snaring. Unfortunately, it's an ongoing issue. This is a very special story that I photographed for The Guardian, the Daily Mail. It got published very, very widely. This is Sudan, the last male northern white rhino, again on Lewa. And unfortunately in 2018 in March, he died, leaving only, his sperm, which is now being put into some northern white females that are remaining, which is his daughter and one other. And so it's very interesting to see what's going to happen now with the species, and how they're going to be able to, are they going to be able to bring them back in vitro, or with just trying to bring them back from extinction, because he was the last male. It's a very beautiful couple of days that I spent with him documenting his support by the rangers. He's got 24 hours, armed guards, and it was just wonderful and very, very sad, obviously, for him to pass away. I also documented for the UN, the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, the ambassador, the Goodwill ambassador Li Bingbing from China. Again, a full week working with her. We went to the David Sheldrick baby elephants. And then she was completely in awe of the baby elephant. So the idea was to really enamor her with what it was like to be with baby elephants. And then walking with the elephants in Samburu, and the Samburu culture and tribe, and learning how they help protect, and the whole beautiful area in Samburu. And then unfortunately, there was a poached elephant during that time. So she got to witness what it was like to go all the way the full cycle with the elephants. And it was a very moving, heartfelt experience all round. But again, another massive environment, wildlife story that was, that's really sort of stayed with me and kept me with my passion to look after nature and to continue with my photography. So what do I love about Kenya? I absolutely adore the people and the color, the landscapes. You go from massive, this is in Amboseli at the foothills of Kilimanjaro, where it doesn't rain often at all. And yet here we are, we've got thunderstorm clouds billowing in, first rains for the whole year. And these women are coming home back to their manyatta, to their homestead in a line. And, obviously you can't really get it more beautiful than that. So people, landscapes. This was a pink sunrise that I photographed very, very early on in my career on a story for Nokia, documenting how mobile phones were changing young marathon runners' lives, because they didn't have to go into Nairobi to talk to their family. And this apparently in the last 12 years since I was there, this pink sunrise with all the mist hasn't ever happened again. This is in Pokot, in a very, very rural western part of Kenya. And this is probably one of my most favorite landscapes that stayed with me. And it's a beautiful print as well. And here we are. So we're in Samburu again. This is the My Africa photographs. This is behind the scenes, the lead role. I mean, it just really shows you the color, the vibrancy of people in Kenya. And the bird life as well. I think Kenya is well known for the bird life. I'm not specifically sure of the exact number of species in Kenya, but all around, especially the Rift Valley corridor, you get the flamingos, and there's absolutely beautiful array of wildlife that you can capture as part of your safari experience. And getting close and intimate and beautiful to wildlife is just one of the things that you really can do in Kenya. I think, in Tanzania, it's very, very rural. It's sort of not as easy in some way, perhaps, to connect to the wildlife because you're so far away in a lot of places. But here in Kenya, the wildlife is well known for being accustomed to having people. So you can actually get quite close, especially in the Mara. This is in Lewa. And your ability to, as I said, get close and connect to nature and wildlife is really, really very possible in Kenya. And it's one of the things that I do love about this country. And again, your opportunity to get pristine, beautiful prints and wildlife memories and images, just the click of a button, like this one, and just get some intimate, beautiful moments. Like this giraffe in Mara North. Here we go. These are some of the beautiful prints that I have, and they're some of my favorite images that I've taken. And again, back to the people, but it's just the children as well. It's very, very endearing, able to connect to. I think Kenya really, really is known for its people and its happy people. They're very engaging. They're wanting and willing to share their experiences and be and talk with you. And I think, you know, with all the travels that I've had around Africa, I really do think that Kenyan people are some of the friendliest and most accessible types of people that you can have your time with. So what are some, now that I'm living and working back in Cottars and spending time again with nature, having spent 15 years documenting some slightly difficult situations. Cottars is on Old Dekesi Conservancy on the edge of the Masai Mara and on the Tanzanian border. It's the very far-flung corner of the Mara, and it's a beautiful, well-kept secret. You get the whole conservancy to yourself. There isn't another name or another lodge or someone living or, you know, working or patrolling, you know, so taking game drives there. So it is just for us, if you like. And we work, the Cottars team work closely with the Cottars Wildlife Conservation Trust, CWCT, which is the sort of conservation protection side of the Conservancy. And there's a lot of activities and a lot of projects that CWCT do. So part of my role as resident photographer at Cottars is not only to support and photograph the safaris and events that guests like to have, but also to document the work that CWCT is doing. And here you can see some of the female rangers. Is one of the conservancies in Masai Mara to have 10 female rangers, and they're very, very proud of bringing these female rangers on. They've become role models in the community, allowing access and communication to the women in the community, which is not always easy when you're talking about culture and values. And they've had a big success in helping to stop cutting trees and talking with the community and helping them to understand the importance of keeping the land under wildlife and you know, keeping the biodiversity up. And on Old Dekesi, there's a school, Old Pilagi School, and CWCT does a lot in partner with the school. This was a sanitary towel distribution, which I photographed, which was in partner with a company called NIA, and it's basically just to help keep the girls in school, so they're not staying at home when they can't come to school or they feel embarrassed to come to school. And so these are just some of the things that CWCT likes to document and make sure that to really try and keep these girls in school so they understand the importance of education, and alongside that, obviously, the importance of living with wildlife and protecting wildlife. And this is one of the other projects CWCT did, is to maintain and bring in piped water to the school. So it helps the children stay in school again. They don't have to go walking kilometers from the school through quite often wild areas and wild animals, which can often cause a conflict, to go to the well or the stream to pick and collect water for the school. So instead now they just go to the tap, and it's really made a very big difference to the school and the ability to connect to education for the children. One of the other projects that CWCT does is beekeeping, in partner with the Kenya Birds and Bees Foundation, who have donated all the equipment, and they're going to be promoting and helping communities to earn an income through keeping bees and having honey. And this is one of the other major projects that CWCT does. It's a vulture rehabilitation center. It's the only one in the Masai Mara where any raptors or any birds, really, if there's any injured birds or any issues, especially poisoning, there's a very, very big issue with poisoning, where the local communities poison carcasses to try and kill the lions or the hyenas. They don't want them to come and kill their cows and their sheep. And so of course the vultures come to the carcasses and they eat that poison, and it's being disastrous for the environment. So one of the major supporting roles that the CWCT does is this rehab project. And here's Nathan. He's trained in vulture rehabilitation. He's completely in love with every single vulture that comes in, and we get to document and photograph what they're doing. And this is him just after 3 weeks. One of these vultures, sometimes they have a broken wing or there was a poisoning. And this is him just letting one of them go, which is one of the, the main part, the point of it's been in a cage for 3 weeks, just being looked after, monitored, and then you watch it fly away back to where it should be. So that's one of the most enjoyable, wonderful things that we get to do as part of the program. The other thing that CWCT has been doing during COVID time has been helping the community, supporting them with food distributions. And here we have a client family who donated some money, enough for a whole month for this community. So their family turned up with the food. We help support and get the food for them with the finances, and then there's a distribution. All the women in the community line up, and it's a wonderful moment to see that community receiving support during this difficult time, because normally clients and guests would come to their village and they would buy some Masai beading, and they would see their culture, and they would have a visit to their Manyata. But now with COVID and with travel restrictions, there's very few clients and very few guests coming. So in order to keep this community and support them, CWCT has been working to do these kind of food distributions during this time. One of the important things that CWCT does, obviously with the rangers, is to work together in partner with the Kenya Wildlife Service. And here we have a Kenya Wildlife Service vet team together with the rangers who are supporting and helping the vet team with this male giraffe who was spotted with a huge wound on his side. And after a couple of days of monitoring, they called in the vets and darted and sedated the giraffe, and they pulled out a poison arrow. We're not quite sure where the poison arrow came from or why the giraffe has been targeted, but this keeps us aware and knowing that these kinds of conflicts are still ongoing and probably will continue as nature and wildlife habitats get smaller and communities start encroaching, and there's this ongoing problem that we have around the world to try and maintain pristine wildlife areas and biodiversity right next to communities. And so the importance of education and collaboration and partnership becomes even more important. So what is my role as a photographer at Cottar? Well, the most important thing for you to understand and to take away with you today is that I'm here for you. I'm here to photograph any events, any safaris, any things that you would like me to photograph, any moments. And so that could be captured professionally, and you can have that as part of your ongoing memories when you meet the community and the people, on a balloon safari, have a picnic or a bush dinner, or a romantic evening with your lovely wife. And then at the end of it, the possibility if you want some prints done, or we can do a bespoke book. There's also some wonderful services post your safari that we could talk about as well. And ultimately, it's really about me being with you as and when you would like me to be with you, documenting your honeymoon or your wedding or any special events, or when you're on safari and you want some support, looking at your camera, how do you photograph this moment, or just getting you to think in a slightly different way so that you're more prepared as to how the wildlife's going to behave. So these are the kind of things just for me to be with you and support you and help you do whatever you need to do with your camera and have your, to be with you on your safari, on your trip. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a little workshop today, just so that you can take a little bit of photography knowledge out of this. I'm sure there's a wide range of knowledge and skills with you all listening today, but I'm just going to share a few things with you. And these are just a few things that when you come with me on safari that you can expect to get out of your time with me. And I know, especially if you've got a new camera, you want to learn how it works. We could look at how to get your exposure right, how to frame for animals and landscapes, because it is different. from people, what lenses to use and when, what shutter speed to set off with your handheld camera, little tips like that. So if you didn't know this already, 1/60th of a second is the shutter speed. Slower than that with your shutter speed, and you will start getting shake when you're just doing handheld. That's just when you're breathing starts affecting how you hold your camera. So that's just a little trick, and I've got quite a few of those. So if you hang around with me, I can impart some of those little tips that you can just remember and help keep your photography not shaky. How to capture Masai community and color. If you've not been introduced to the Masai community yet, the kind of the culture and customs, how to be with them, or how to talk, how to shake hands, or they have a way of, when they talk to children, they put their hands on the children's heads. It's very endearing. It's a beautiful, beautiful way to connect with young children. And then again, I'm here to support the guides and to help you see what kind of animal behavior, what's going on with animals. And so you can be prepared as to what's going to happen next, because that's when you will catch, things that you wouldn't otherwise catch with your photography. Okay. So tip 1, I just want to talk to you a little bit about equipment for safari photography. It's a very good idea to invest in a good SLR or DSLR, digital single lens reflex is what SLR stands for. And it's, one of those ones, interchangeable lenses. And it's a good idea to have a couple of lenses if you can. Lenses are always a good idea to invest in well, because they will stay with you for a very long time, as opposed to the bodies, which tend to change over time. Ideally, as I've written here, it's good to have 2 cameras to save changing lenses, which can be time consuming, and it means you can miss some of the action. It also means that it saves the dust getting into the sensor when you open the camera up. And speaking of dust, another little tip for you: pillowcases or laundry bags are very, very good just to keep with you. So if you have any spare at home, bring some in your suitcase, because they're very good just to slip your camera into while you're waiting in the car, in the vehicle, when you're not actually shooting and you're driving, because there is a lot of dust in the Masai Mara. And looking at camera support, when you're on foot, it can be a good idea if you want to carry a monopod or a tripod. There's plenty of people that will be walking with you. So if you don't want to lug all the equipment with you, we can always help you and get somebody to be with you and carry the tripod for you. In the vehicle, if you're a very serious photographer, there's options to have a clamp with a tripod head. And in most situations, actually, it's very useful just to use a bean bag. And what you can do is just bring it empty to save the weight. And when you get to Cottar's, you can just fill it with sand or beans. And that way you can save space and weight in your suitcase. Okay. So what to look for in a safari camera? If you've not invested in one yet, then here is a couple of things to look out for when you're going to go out to the shops or go and look online. One of the important things to think about is frame rate. And what this means is how many frames a camera can take per second. Sports cameras, like the guys that take football, they've got these sucking great lenses and a big camera, and their frame rates are, like big ones, like that. But with wildlife photography, the more frame rate, the higher the frame rate, the better in some ways, so that you can have more of an opportunity to capture the action as it's happening. But in the instance of coming to Kenya, maybe for the first time or the 10th time, if you are a keen photographer, a keen wildlife photographer, you really only need 4 frames per second or 6 frames per second. Anything more than that, you're really looking at the realms of being a professional, and the price obviously is going to go up with your camera body with that. So that's something to think about. Now, there's something called a sensor in your digital camera, and this is it's like the film, the emulsion on your film in the old days. It's what the camera picks up and reads and turns it into the image. It's a good idea to get a very good sensor if you can, but it's not ultimately very important if it's going to put you out of budget. But if you do want to have some good prints, then I would do think about what you can afford in terms of sensor, because it does help pick up the in focus and help pick up details, and it'll probably save you having a bit of a worry later. Durability, that's probably one of the important things to mention. You want a slightly tough camera, nothing that's going to scratch easily. You want something that's dustproof and shockproof, and preferably waterproof if you can, because you never really know when you might end up having a leaky roof or or some rain coming in through the side of your vehicle, which is lots of fun, but not if you want to keep your camera safe. Lenses, as I mentioned, very important to really think about which ones. My thoughts is a wide lens and a telephoto lens, something that you can actually access 300 millimeters, because anything less will be frustrating. You really do want to be able to get up close and personal, like this elephant shot here, and really get the details of the animals that you're going to be photographing. Every brand has a very wide range of lenses, and you'll see when you do a little bit of research, which is what I'm going to suggest and ask that you do if you don't know yet what you'd like, is just to have a look what's out there, because some are more expensive than others, but you can get some very, very good quality lenses. I have got a Tamron lens. It's 150 to 600 millimeters, and you know, it's fantastic. It's one of the ones that I use often. Okay, so these are the 4 things that probably will help you choose which camera is going to be most suitable for you. You're going to want to look at budget, weight, obviously, depending on where you're coming from in the world, and how much you feel like carrying around lots of equipment. Ease of use. Canon really is an incredibly user-friendly platform. They've spent a lot of time working out what buttons should go where, and making it ergonomic, so your fingers naturally can find the buttons. You don't need to press one button with another button to get another function. It's very easy. Canon, very what's the word, intuitional. And of course, if you don't want to buy something, you can always rent whilst you're out on safari. I know Calumet and B&H do some renting, so there are rent options, so don't forget about that. Here are some examples of some best cameras for safari. I've gone through and listed all the different brands. You've got Canon, Lumix, Fujifilm. So this is going from the DSLR, digital SLRs, through to some compacts. So you have a, excuse me, a different range of budgets and prices. You've got also the weatherproof, you've got how many megapixels, mirrorless, and you'll be getting a fact sheet, sorry, excuse me, in your follow-up articles. You'll be getting my suggestion for a Canon mirrorless, a Canon digital SLR, and a Canon compact, which is my suggestion and ultimate cameras for you. But just here, this gives you a lot more variety to look at and see what's out there. You can see the range of prices on B&H here as well. So some handy equipment to keep in mind. Telephoto lens, as we talked about. The 70 to 200 mil lens is a very, very useful one. You can also buy a teleconverter that will bring that up to a 300 millimeters. It's a 1.4 converter. So you do lose a couple of stops of light. You know, you do lose your ability to get a very wide aperture and some depth of field. So you won't get those sort of nice compact frames, but there are budget options for you out there. Spare batteries, large capacity memory cards, card reader, beanbag and tripod, as I said, and at night photography, you know, for animals, some small cats, flash and flash trigger can be quite nice. So tip 2, settings. There's no real settings for wildlife photography. It really is up to you to get as creative as you want to. But my big point that I'd like to share with you today is just to make sure you have the understanding of basic photography. And that means how the ISO, that means the sensitivity to light, and the aperture and the shutter speed all relate with each other. If you don't know any of those terminologies, then and you are interested in photography, then you could just take a screenshot of this, and or just remember ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and you can Google that. And there's something called the exposure triangle. And as you change one, it affects the other two. It's a very good and important thing to understand as your basic photography. So you will be able to then understand how to freeze the action, like I did with this Grant's Gazelle here, and also to avoid camera shake, how quickly or slow your shutter speed should be in order to help you stay with a solid shot, and also to give you the versatility and creativity, just to see how soft and how much you want in focus and how blurred you want the background. Tip 3, composition. It's very important to have an eye for composition. You can get your eye better, you can practice, and that means taking lots of photographs and coming on safari with us, and we can point you in the right direction and help you just keep shooting and review the images as they come up on the back of your screen. A bit more of this, a bit less of that. Mind the tree, mind the half legs sticking in there. And so, as I've put here, don't cut the limbs off trees, and just keep your frame edges tidy so you don't have any distractions. Important on safari. I mean, photography really is all about working with light, but on safari, you can tailor-make your experience as to what's possible for you. You can get up very, very early if you like getting up early and getting the sunrise, as we've done here with the elephant, or obviously you get the evening light as well with sunset. But during the day, you're very much up to Mother Nature and what skies you get given. Overcast weather provides actually very good sunlight. It gives you like a huge softbox, allows you to have some nice workable light throughout the day. Bright sunshine can be a little bit more difficult. So harsh midday means less wildlife and heavy shadows, but there are ways around that. Obviously, if you're photographing in shadows and maybe harsh midday sunshine, you might want to just be relaxing at Cottar's by the swimming pool and having a cocktail. So you can save the wildlife for the morning and the evening. But obviously, your safari, you can tailor make it how you like. Very key tip for wildlife photography, something that often isn't mentioned, is the very huge importance to focus on eyes. When you're tracking or when you're focusing on any animal, the single most important place that you should put your focal point, and that is eyes. We can get away with any other part of the body being even slightly out of focus, but we really do need the eyes dead sharp. So this is one of my key tips that I would like to share with you today. Just focus on the eyes and everything else will be okay. Photographing people. As we're on safari with wildlife and nature, we might forget that there's the opportunity to photograph people. But Brooke mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, there's the opportunity to go to the local community, to the Masai community. There's those food distributions that we talked about, but there's also your lodge staff, and they have an amazing team of Masai that come dancing in the evening. And they come and sing and dance to you, and you can take some portraits. You can set up yourself, you can dress in the Masai shuka, which is the blanket, and shanga, which is the beads. You can have yourself your own little photo shoot, which I could photograph, or I can coach you how to photograph. And as I said, one of the most wonderful things about people in Kenya is how friendly they are. You walk away from your experience at Cottar's with 100 new best friends. And wonderful butterflies and insects and smaller things to focus on. So it's not just about the big five and all the big other things. They also have what they call the big five, the small five. So there's, like we have rhino, elephant, buffalo, cheetah, lion, and leopard as the big five. So instead, for the small five, you got the leopard turtle, leopard tortoise, you got the rhino beetle, you got the tiger. What else? What was it? No, we don't have tigers in Africa. What's it called? The lion. Oh, I don't know what the lion small one is, but we have the
lion ant. Oh, sorry, the ant lion.
Thank you, the lion. And what's the other one? Yeah, it's amazing. It's just so much small stuff. I mean, you can just beautiful moments like this with the butterflies. You're just being captivated. There's a spring and a waterfall in Aldecessy Conservancy, and you can just completely get swallowed up with dragonflies and butterflies. It's very, very easy just to get enamored by all the small stuff too. So do remember that you just, those big lenses, you also to have a smaller lens so you can capture, and compact camera will do this absolutely fine. And last but not least, or near the end here, be safe and respect wildlife. As we always say in the photography industry, a photo is not worth risking your life or your safety. And, you know, we obviously have to remember that despite the fact that animals are used to people and vehicles in some instances, they are wild and we don't always know what's going to happen next. So we do like to make sure that we protect and don't harass the animals, make sure that we are conducting ourselves only as observers and respect them as such. So not to impact any scene, no big whistling or banging the side of the car, or especially not interrupting or interfering with a hunt, because you know, obviously it can take days sometimes for big cats to find a moment like that, and that can be really quite damaging for them. Memories as well as photographs. It's wonderful taking photographs on safari, but the important thing, and it's obviously I'm taking my own advice here as well as a photographer, it's addictive, but it's also important to not let it dominate everything. It's very important to slow down, sometimes put your camera down and you know, take in the views, and just don't have to always have your camera and have to always take a photograph. Sometimes it's well worth just to sit and smell beautiful smells, especially after it's rained, and the scent of the grass and the flowers come up through where you are, and the sounds of the African bush, especially you've got the crickets and the tree frogs and the hyrax at night, and all sorts of sounds happening during the day. So remember to keep that in mind as well. And not least, please do consider including my services in your experience, because there's so much that comes with it. There's not only can I support and give you some advice with photography in general, and also with wildlife photography, there's hands-on tuition. I can give you settings, functions, and tips. We can have a one-on-one workshop or a one-on group workshop where you can sit with me in camp and we can go through troubleshooting any issues you've got with your camera, getting to know your camera, give you advice on which cameras, if you're not sure, if you haven't got one yet, and also your lens choices, and just being with you as you photograph out in the field, composition of images, what to look for, how to frame, and to also, when I'm with you, whilst you're learning, I can also document you and your family being on your safari with your trip, weddings and honeymoons, very beautiful intimate time where you, as Brooke said, you can concentrate on your trip and have your images and memories captured. But secondarily to the photography side of things, I'm here to support you in your experience and help guide you, and that comes in support of the guide who you'll be having with Cottars and the experiences that you have. So if and when I'm with you, helping you with photography or documenting your trip, then I'll also be there to help you with your well-being, to help support the guide in understanding and connecting you with wildlife and behavior. So Cottars and Extraordinary Journeys have an exclusive safari itinerary for you, which includes me and some other amenities. If you're an amateur photographer, you can just tailor make anything you like. If you're an amateur photographer, you can just have a half day, you can have a 2 hours, I think is the minimum, just so that we can actually have a proper time. 2 hours, half day, 1 day, really whatever suits you and whatever you're comfortable with. If you want more after that, then that's obviously possible. And if you're a more serious photographer and you want to really go deeper into how I can work with you and support you in your development and document also your safari, you can have my services for, you know, as long as you like, for your whole trip, or for, you know, 4 to 5 nights if you like. And we can do some tutorials and some photo shoots depending on what your itinerary is. But as I've put here, it's important to note that really it's completely up to you how you want to spend your whole safari. It's tailor-made to whatever you want, and I can fit in to as little or as you know, as little or as much as you would like me to fit into. And obviously you've got the rest of the impact activities and the rest of your wonderful experience at Cottars, like the swimming pool and the cocktails that I mentioned earlier. But I mean, it's the most beautiful, wonderful location, beautiful view, sunset, bush dinners. The staff are just the most wonderful, gentle, amazing connector staff. They'll do everything they can to make your stay perfect. And I can't recommend a trip to Cottars more. And I would absolutely love to meet you. So please do keep that in mind, and you can ask your Extraordinary Journeys Safari specialist for more information. Thank you very much for listening. And we will see you at Cottars.
So thank you,
Brooke, I think.
Yep. Thanks very much, Georgina. And I think that we're going to try to get just into our pictures. I'll let the EJ team take care of the tech side of things while I start asking the questions for you. So first, thank you very much again for your time, Georgina, and thanks to everyone who joined us. I loved this because I studied photojournalism when I was in college, but now I travel with this. So this was a very nice reminder of all of the tips and tricks of the trade to have great photos on Safari. And I think that's actually, I think I'm going to just reiterate what you said, because the first question that came in is there a possibility of accompanying you? So that's exactly the point of this, is that Extraordinary Journeys has an amazing opportunity for you to work with Georgina. And as she said, some of her services are built into that itinerary, and then many more can be kind of added on based upon what it is that you're interested in. So there were two different questions that came in specifically about the advice for gaining the trust of the subject, and how do you approach people and get permission to take their photographs. So if we just start with the cultural side of things, how do you approach people and how do you take great photographs of people and communities?
Okay, well, one of the most wonderful things that we have is access to the local communities in Aldacassie Conservancy. So we have a little bit of the work already done for us. So if you're coming out, they already know what it's like to communicate and, you know, to chat and be with guests. So that kind of sort of first permissions, if you like, is already dealt with. And but obviously you have to still approach people with respect. Some of the people within the community might not even, they might be having a bad day, or they don't want to have their photograph taken. So it's always important to have your camera showing if you have a camera, and so that you're not suddenly springing this thing, you know, this machine on people. Have it showing so that they know what your intentions are. And you can ask in a lot of different ways. You can ask with your eyes, you can ask with your hands, you can ask just by lifting your camera up and nodding. And the trick really is just to be really thoughtful and careful with how you present yourself, just walking slowly around, familiarizing yourself with the community, greeting them with a nod of the head. You've got the rest of the guides and the people there who can translate for you. Quite a lot of the Masai actually do speak English. Some of the elders and some of the community leaders do speak English. So you can immediately talk directly with some of them. But there are others that won't be able to understand what you're saying. And I think it's just to proceed carefully and cautiously and respectfully, and just have your camera. And when you're thinking about taking photographs of people, one of the key things that I like to remember is just don't get them with their heads down. If they're doing anything, wait for that moment when they're going to look up. So you always get that eye engagement. And don't have them too far away so that you have to really dig for in your frame to find out who the people are. Masai are really wonderful to photograph because they're pretty much always wearing something bright, so they pop out in the frame. And you can actually stage things to some degree. You can say, please, can you move here, or can you come stand here? Their houses are made of mud. It's got lots of texture, and so you can really get some beautiful popping colors with some wonderful cultural background. And it's actually one of the, I would say, if you aren't experienced in people photography, then your opportunity in your time at Cottars, if you go to the Aldacassie community villages, you'll be quite surprised at how easy it is to connect with the community and photograph them.
Wonderful. I'm going to give a trick that my husband uses because I want to know your thought on, are we on the right side or the wrong side of photographing communities? He likes the unstaged, right? And sometimes when you ask someone if you can take a picture, they change the expression on their face. So when we go into markets, he stands in front of me and he has it look like he's taking a picture of me, but then the zoom goes right past me and far out into the market. What do you think about being a little surreptitious that way? Are we right or wrong?
I think if it's some a way that you've practiced and you between the two of you you can get some good intimate shots, then I think keep going, but just be warned, you might get caught one day. You'll have to explain yourself. But it's it depends on time. I mean, if you've got time to get the trust and if you're in a community where they really don't mind, then it's okay. I mean, if you try and photograph in Nairobi in the street, then that can be really difficult. So that kind of way of accessing and getting photographs can be quite useful. But if you do come on safari and you do interact with the communities in Oldakesi and Cottars, then I don't think you'll have that problem. But you do have that issue of people standing to attention and getting a little bit more stiff. So I like to mix it up. You get a few portraits where you can direct them, that you can ask them to move and smile. The longer you are with somebody, the softer they become with you and the more connected they are with you. So if you have got 5 minutes and just being really smiley, being really open, being really gentle and caring towards them, then they'll open up and be with you quicker, if you like. So you can get a couple of really stiff shots in the beginning, but if you sort of joke around with them and you can even pretend to jump like a Masai, like you're really good at jumping like a Masai, little jokes, they'll lighten up and they can let you in and you'll get some really light images where they're not so stiff. So there's lots of little tricks that you can use.
I love that. So the next question that came in is actually specifically about if the African conservation groups are recognized as 501c3 nonprofits in the US. And I'm going to jump in and I'll say two things. And then of course, Georgina, please, add if you would like. But two things that are very important. So just because we're talking about the Cottar's Wildlife Conservation Trust, yes, Cottar's Wildlife Conservation Trust is affiliated with AWF, or African Wildlife Foundation, which is a registered 501c3 in the US. So it's possible to donate directly through AWF, but donations have to be specifically earmarked as Cottar's or CWCT because they work with a lot of different organizations. The Extraordinary Journeys team can give you more information or put you in touch with me. Happy to help provide more information. But beyond that, what I love about the impact activities that Cottar's put together, and remember, Georgina as an in-residence photographer and all of the different things that she offers, we consider an impact activity because photography can impact, community and culture and conservation for a good. She is donating a portion of her fees to CWCT. So all of the impact activities that Cottar's has, money is going to CWCT. For you, just in booking this itinerary with Extraordinary Journeys, which includes Georgina, money is being donated. Extraordinary Journeys does an incredible amount of, donational support of entities in Africa that they believe in, again, beyond Cottar's as well. And same with all of the other impact activities that Georgina mentioned. You spoke about our female rangers, about the vulture rehabilitation project, the pangolins. All of those can also be added into the itinerary that Extraordinary Journeys has created for you. And every single one of those has money being donated. So there's two different ways of supporting Cottar's and supporting other entities in Africa as well. But Georgina or Jamie, if you have more that you want to say, please do. And then I'll go to the next question.
No, you said everything. That was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Because that's the one I can answer. Now we're going back to Georgina. How do you clean lenses after a long day of shooting?
What's the question?
How do you clean your lenses after a long day of shooting?
Wow. Well, carefully, as you always do with the camera, with the lens. You obviously don't take your camera apart in the vehicle. Take it back to your tent and brush off the dust. You can either have one of those those little ball things which push out air, or you can do a little dust, a little brush dust and just so that there's no dust on the outside of your camera, so that when you do open it, it's not going to fall inside. You just got to go carefully, piece by piece. And this is where, if you're an impatient person, you have to slow down and actually give yourself some time and take your camera to pieces and really look after it. But really, the cameras are so well put together. And if you're not changing lenses, you won't really have that much problem with dust, unless there's been unless it really is sort of dust season and we don't have too much rain. And Cottars, there's a lot of rain that happens. For some reason, the weather comes in, and there's a beautiful hill that Cottars is sitting in front of, and that hill seems to bring in a lot of rain. So it's very rare to have long periods of time without rain. So yeah, dust isn't as big a problem as it would be if you went to Amboseli, for example.
Thanks. And I'm starting to mute and unmute myself since I'm literally sitting in the rain as we speak. So sorry about the background noise on my side. So Georgina, you spoke a little bit about mirrorless cameras when you were going through the different options. And I know that more detail from you comes with spending time with you, but a high level question was just, what do you think about mirrorless cameras? So could you speak about that a little bit more specifically?
Yeah, so mirrorless cameras really are kind of the way that photography industry is going now. And if you are a serious photographer, then it really is worth looking into spending the money that you would spend on a camera or a new camera and putting that into a mirrorless camera. DSLRs are probably longer term, over the next 10 years, are going to be faded out. I've just been having a whole week of series of trainings with Canon, looking at the mirrorless options. We've got the Canon R system that's really going to, longer term, is going to phase out the digital SLR system. But I mean, for now, I think we're all, those of us who, like myself, who still work with the SLR system are, I don't think it's going to be phased out for 10 years. But the mirrorless system, the R, is an amazing system. They've got amazing new connectivity and focal systems. It really is something, if you're a very keen photographer, you really want to be looking at the mirrorless system. It's quieter, they've got a lot more options, the lighting, just everything to do with the mirrorless system is kind of better, if you like. So if you have any personal questions or any specific questions, then I can answer that. But yeah, just talking generally about mirrorless, it really is the way forward. So that is my suggestion, to look at those if you have got some time.
I love it. Every time you answer a question, I come up with 5 more in my head that I want to ask. But one that we got from Sasha is, what capacity memory card do you suggest?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. Well, a capacity memory card is obviously going to be dependent on the number of pixels that your camera takes. The pixels, the higher the file, the bigger each file is. Mine is 50, so every single raw picture is a 50 megabyte file. So really, for me, it's not worth working with anything less than a 32 gigabyte file. And so I range between 32 and 64, depending on what I'm going to be shooting for. But if you're also possibly going to be thinking about doing some video whilst you're on your safari, and therefore your tripod and your beanbag are going to come in handy. So a few video things. If you are thinking about video, then I would definitely go on the higher end of I think you got 128 gigabytes after that. I don't do video, so I just stick with 32 and 64. But yeah, I would say 32, no less than 32, but 64 is a very good one. The problem is with having a high capacity memory card is, if you lose it, you lose a lot of pictures. So, but having said that, you don't want to have to keep changing your memory card, and you're right in the middle of a cheetah hunt and suddenly your memory runs out. So there's a fine balance between the two. So yeah, I'd say 64 gigabytes is probably, between 32 and 64 is a very good number to start with.
Wonderful. Would you choose the Tamron zoom over a 600 millimeter Canon prime lens? Technical.
If I was given the 600 millimeter prime lens, no. I mean, yeah, no, I wouldn't. I would have the 600 millimeter prime lens, but it's a huge thing and it costs a fortune. And you're going to have and in probably a whole nother vehicle to carry it. So so for me, you know, I'm not out doing stock images. I'm not out for Nat Geo. I'm a lot of the time I'm out, and I need versatility. I need to be able to go from a landscape to a tight shot with the wildlife. So a zoom lens really is quite useful. And so there's Tamron, the 150 to 600 that I've got is half the price of a Canon lens. And I really shouldn't be saying this as a Canon ambassador and Canon trainer, but you know, it's really something that, and the quality and the focals of it are very, very good. It's a very, very, very good affordable lens that gives you the range that you want, and it's very, very quick. So yeah, you've got to have the trade-off, ultimate quality and expense with a fixed lens like that, especially 300, 400, 500, 600 millimeter lenses. They're huge, they're very weighty, very difficult to carry on safari unless you are a big pro, very interested in photography, in which case then you wouldn't be listening to me today. Probably you'd probably be shooting for Nat Geo. But yeah, just think about versatility as well. You want to be able to do landscapes as well with a zoom lens.
Yeah, just an interesting experience I had. I was traveling on safari with a friend of mine who is a professional photographer, but she does like advertising campaigns and things like that. So it's her first safari ever. She's got all of her equipment. She's a pro. She's been on every magazine any of you have ever seen or read. And she's like, oh my gosh, everything is closer than I thought it would be. And she's like switching out her lenses because she thought that everything was going to be far away. And like, she never had the right lenses. Okay, so you keep talking about Canon, understandably, and there's always the question about Canon, Nikon. So, I mean, why are you team Canon? You specifically said it's just easier, it's more user-friendly, but are there other things about Canon that really got you on board as, you know, a Canon ambassador?
Well, so right at the beginning of my career, I kind of fell into the Canon camp by mistake. It wasn't a conscious choice that I did Canon. But if you look at how Canon works, especially in Africa and emerging markets, then you could probably understand why I did fall into the Canon camp. Canon's very, very good at connecting with the up and coming user, if you like, especially in African and emerging markets. And they spend a lot of time, a lot of marketing out in the field, actually making their cameras accessible to people who don't have big fat budgets, and really having a lot of cameras, a lot of options, a lot of lenses. I mean, I think they've sold something like 300 million lenses in the last you know, in the last 10 years since they started. It's you know, since 1973 or something when they started. It's an insane amount of access to people who want to take photographs, and they don't just stop with the lenses. They've also got access. They do products such as printing and coloring, color grading, and they're doing beautiful cinematic cameras and camera lenses. So they're moving more into video. So they're really, really expanding in their market, and they're very, very good at what they do. They've got a very unique sensor, which allows you know, much versatility and great quality. But the other thing that I love about Canon, and which also helped me to move into being a Canon ambassador, is the training part of it, the connectivity, as I said, with emerging markets, not just with the cameras and the equipment, but also with the mind, with the education, and doing the training and the workshops, and really helping people to understand what photography is about and how you can use that in your life to express how you feel and what you want to say. And in this world now where everybody likes to have a say, and everybody's allowed to have a say, especially now with you know, you know, African voices and people really now wanting to work with local photographers and local teams and in Africa. And my agency now works across GG Images Media. We look for local photographers in and around Africa. So part of my training is Canon training. I bring on local talent from all around Africa, and we talk to them, and they get access to a Canon camera, and they understand more and more how to express themselves using photography.
I think that's a really important thing that you kind of ended with there. Just back to David's question. So AWF is actually sending content creators that Cottar's is working with virtually and then on property. So, you know, when we look at the kind of nonprofit side of things, very much educational support is a really big part of what Cottar's and Georgina bring to the table. Georgina, any suggestions on backup drives for downloading photos? I'm sure you do.
Oh yes, yeah, especially for videographers. You'll be all very clued up if you're a videographer, but as a photographer, it's perhaps something that we're not used to thinking about. Yeah, I use Toshiba. Toshiba is a very transcend. Sorry, I have to be very specific here because Toshiba actually has a bad reputation for crashing. So I should have not have said Toshiba. Transcend is a very, very good brand. And they're very affordable. So for a 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, you can spend anywhere between $80 and $120. And it's a good idea if you do have the budget for it to actually have 2, come out with 2 so that you have a backup. It's a direct copy of what you're photographing. So you go out shooting, when you come back, I would suggest to bring a card reader. Then you're not using the battery of your camera and fiddling around with lots of wires. You've got a dedicated card reader, which is a tiny little plug-in jobby into your USB, and you can put your memory card in there and it sucks it up into your hard drive really, really quickly. And as you're doing that, you can have both your hard drives plugged in at the same time and have them copying on. It does take longer, but it's worth it. Now you have your images copied twice, and if one hard drive gets damaged or crashed, then you always have your images on the other one.
Excellent, thank you. And so I think we have time for one more question. If anybody has one, you can throw it in now. Otherwise, I've got a final question that I'll ask, but I'll turn it over to others first. All right, so I loved some of your landscape photos. You know, when you were speaking about the work you did with the Nature Conservancy, for me, sometimes I just see a nice picture and go, oh, landscape, but there's a story behind it. So if you had one famous or, you know, fabulous favorite story about taking a photograph somewhere in Kenya, what's the one that you kind of, you know, always think about? Like, what's the story behind the photo that you would want to leave us with?
Gosh. Well, I haven't actually included it in the slideshow. It's probably, it's for the Conservation International, it's for the My Africa digital movie, what's it called? Virtual reality 3D movie that I did the behind the scenes, and I also did the front page, the promotion poster, which is the image that I'm talking about. And it's of a young Samburu girl interacting with an orphan baby elephant from Ruteti Elephant Orphanage. And there's this little moment where she is feeding him some little snouts come out, and we've got this, within 1 second, I managed to catch this beautiful moment between, you know, a human and an orphan baby elephant. And when I was given the task to take this post-it image, I was thinking, how am I going to get a young Samburu girl who's never actually been that close to an elephant, actually this perfect post-it image happening? But somehow it just unfolded beautifully. And at that moment, there's overcast sky, and at that moment, the sun just beamed through, and they were in this sort of spotlight of sunlight. And it's just a beautiful moment that I think sometimes in photography, you really can't, you can plan as much as you can, but you do need a bit of magic. And so that image is something that I do carry with me, because quite a lot of magic happened that day, and I'm relieved because it was for a multi-million-dollar poster. So I managed to get the shot. I was not sure I was going to get it.
I love it. Thank you. And so I'm just going to say a very quick thanks to Georgina and to everybody else for your time today as well, and hand it back over to Jamie and the Extraordinary Journeys team. I really appreciated being a part of this. So thanks, Jamie, and thanks, everyone.
Yes, I'm going to say the exact same thing. Thank you so much, Georgina. I mean, it's just incredible to hear stories and see some of your work and understanding the journey behind what you're doing and everything that you're continuing to do sort of to affect conservation and promote promote conservation in Kenya. So thank you. And thank you, Brooke, also for being here and moderating and adding your expertise on Cottars. It's a place that we love very much and are looking forward to sending all of you. So just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone that has, this itinerary that we're talking about with Georgina's services, some more information about her, what she's able to include in a stay at Cottar's, as well as some tips and tricks, and a couple of her sort of top picks for cameras. So some more educational information to help you prepare for your next trip. So you'll have my contact info, obviously, through that email. You probably should have gotten one today. Please make sure to always check your promotions and spam folders if you're expecting anything from us. The Google does what it does. So thank you again for joining us, and look out for an email. A recording of this webinar will be part of that. So expect that in the next day or so, once we kind of get all the bits edited and cropped out. So thank you so much again. June 24th is our next date. Please log on to our, go to the website, extraordinaryjourneys.com. You'll see virtual passport sort of up at the top menu and find out what we have in store. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.